completely different than coming in from a central location.
Right.
So without understanding that architecture at first, I wouldn't have known that. So when I go on set, I usually spend a week just going through the architecture, working with the site architects one-on-one.
I have to tell you, thank you for that answer, because that's exactly what I've been preaching when it comes to mobile performance testing. Establish what type of mobile project you're on. And a native app performance test is different approach, has a different strategy than a hybrid app or a web app, mobile web app. And I've been saying this for at least 2-3 years now, and I don't think it's getting far enough. So I'm really pleased to have you establish that difference, and hopefully we can get the word out.
Yeah, absolutely. And we'll have some fun. I mean, I'm glad you kind of asked me that. Maybe I'll put a little extra, maybe I'll make sure I have a slide or two and spend a couple extra minutes talking about
Excellent.
How you can go attack.
Yeah, the architecture is a must understanding. Any mobile tester has to understand the architecture, but in particular when it comes to certain types of testing. Thank you very much, Howard. I really appreciate your time.
Yeah,
and
pleasure. And I hope to see everybody at my session. Albeit it's going against Tomlinson, so I don't know. This could be tougher. Tomlinson and I have worked together for quite a while too, so I think I'll be sitting in on the Perf Fight session too when they tape it.
Oh, good. I just talked to him a few days ago, and yes, he is doing it. Him and James Pulley.
I've worked with both Pulley and Tomlinson together.
Another reason to attend Perf Fights and STPCon to see it live.
See it live. Come see the pageantry.
All right. Well, again, thank you, Howard, for giving us your time.
You're welcome.
And
my pleasure.
And we will now be heading over to Bob Galen, and he is an Agile methodologist, practitioner, and coach at Velocity Partners. And Bob will be doing 2 sessions. He will be doing an extended session and a full-day workshop. So the full-day workshop will be on Monday of the conference, and we would like to ask Bob some questions. But first of all, Bob, tell us a little bit about your background.
Hi, Jean-Ann. Thank you for having me. I've been doing software development for 30 plus years. I got interested in Agile when it was first introduced. You hear a lot of people say that, but I was in on the ground floor by accident. So around the late 90s, 2000, I was an extreme programming practitioner, and then Scrum. I've evolved into a coach and a trainer, and I do that full time now. And I found my bliss. So I knock on wood. I'm very thankful that Agile has been around for a while and it continues to grow, and it aligns so very well with my background and my interests.
Great. And what made you decide to do a session, the yin and yang of metrics?
We've done that a few times. Sean Bradshaw is my co-conspirator in that session, and we've done that a few times. Sean and I, we both come at the world from a traditional perspective. We're old enough to know what waterfall is and what testing is like in waterfall environments, and what metrics are like in those environments, et cetera, et cetera. And then I came to Agile sooner than Sean, so he still has some lineage towards waterfall and traditional metrics, and I've converted, and I have some lineage towards more Agile metrics. But I understand traditional, and we argue a lot. We've argued a lot about the difference in metrics, and from a test project point of view, from a testing point of view, but also from a project point of view, or general software development metrics. So a few years ago, we decided to do this yin and yang thing, which is he takes the traditional viewpoint. I guess that makes sense, and I take the Agile viewpoint. But during the workshop, we sort of meet in the middle. We find that there are no pure metrics. I think pure waterfall metrics don't make that much sense nowadays. And I don't know if whatever pure Agile metrics are, I don't know if they always make sense in a lot of contexts. So we we have this debate. And we also try to pull in probably a third of the session is Q&A. So we try to make this session very dynamic to what attendees want to hear. Metrics is, in my experience, I don't know about yours, but it's one of those areas that people struggle with for the last 800 years. People struggle with what to measure and then how to measure it, et cetera. So we usually get a lot of good interaction.
Well, that's a really interesting point, because I'm always concerned about the leadership and how the leadership wants specific metrics. And it's very difficult, I think, to show this for an agile environment where that leadership is satisfied with the metrics, but yet agile being agile, of course, you want to be able to expand and create and, show a working relationship and still be productive.
I think it is a challenge. In my coaching, one of the things I try to coach, I do a fair bit of training and coaching of leadership that are trying to move from traditional command and control leadership or hierarchical leadership to agile leadership. And they don't do it overnight. Right. And they need training and they need situational coaching if their hearts are in the right place, if they're trying to make that that transformation. And a big thing that they have to change, I think, is their view of what to measure. The best way I can counsel it is traditionally we've measured silos, right? So we've measured testing. How many, I joke, how many test cases run per tester per day per bathroom break? We measure those things and we measure them, we have plans and we measure, plans and actuals and things like that. Whereas that functional metric of measuring testers is sort of less interesting in an agile context. You want to measure the team, which includes measuring the testers. It also includes measuring BAs, Scrum Masters, developers, etc. Right. That transition is hard for leaders to do, to make. But I think it's powerful once they make it. Agile is not anti-measurement. It's just you're measuring the outbound side of the team instead of measuring the silos is the way I think of it. And yes, measure the team, measure the velocity, measure their capacity, measure the quality output, measure the value they're delivering to the customer. That, sort of whatever the manifesto says, I think it's really healthy to measure the outbound side of agile teams. And we'll talk about that in the workshop.
Oh, good. Okay. So you also would be talking about what kinds of specific metrics to follow based on an agile environment, based on the entire team, beyond just testing.
Well, we talk. So Sean doesn't. Sean focuses on, not totally, I'm kidding around a little bit, but he'll focus on that traditional testing metrics and how do you measure project success from a test point of view. And he's got some great measurements, like a zero bug bounce. So I'm not going to explain it, but there's something he talks about, which is a ZBB. And measuring a ZBB is an indicator of the project maturing and getting ready. That's a traditional waterfall test metric. It can be very powerful. I'll talk more about what sorts of team-based metrics to measure. I talk about 4 buckets, and one of those buckets is quality. I think a good agile team has to measure quality but on the outbound side. So I think an interesting thing would be what I call sprint escapes or release escapes. Measure things that get into the customer's hands, measure the trending of those things, and then if you're really being agile, you should see those escapes should be very small. And they should be very minor, and they should be trending from large to small over time. And to me, that would be an outbound metric. That might be a quality-oriented metric. But I'm not going to hand attendees like here's your box of 5 magical metrics. Okay. I talk about 4 buckets, but I want the teams to think about what are they going to measure and why.
Good.
And why are they going to show it, and what behavior is it showing? And I want leadership to get involved as well.
Yeah, I was just going to bring that up, was leadership understanding what it is, again, in an agile environment as opposed to traditional, because they already have their ideas. But when you're transitioning to agile, a lot of times I find that leaders do not understand how to formulate what they want to see because of the type of environment. So I'm hoping that there can be a definition that leadership can understand in your session?
I think it's not even just leader. There's a definition that they can understand, but also so instead of this thing where leaders say, here's the metric, or the team say, here's what we'll allow you to measure, or leaders saying, here's what I want to measure, I want to activate. In Agile where you say it's not testers versus developers, it's a whole team approach. What I want to emphasize, I want leaders to become part of the team. I want them to become part of the stakeholders. So whatever it is, get in the game with your team, figure it out, and measure something that matters, for gosh sakes. Like measure something that matters to the team and to you. Don't just, you've seen dashboards. There's dashboards with 100 indicators on it, and it's not driving any action whatsoever. We're just getting this sense of it's like this dashboard on this car, and we really care about the speedometer and maybe oil and brakes or something. Well, what Agile says, measure the things that truly matter. Have a KPI or a metrics list of 10 critical indicators that not only management is paying attention to, but the team is actually actively it's driving their behavior. For example, a quality metric that is driving the team to improve quality. There's something you want to hang your hat on.
Well, that and just from the other side of it. And I focus because I've been on an Agile team where leadership did not get involved at all. And this was on a medical device. And it was a very difficult situation because we tried to change the methodology at first from a waterfall to Agile and a lot of different situations. So leaders need to understand that they have their metrics to follow through on what they're trying to achieve from the results of the team.
Correct.
Yeah. So that's correct. I'm glad you understood what I was trying to say.
But not just that. I mean, you said, well, they have their metrics. I would generalize it and say those leaders need to. I do a lot of leadership coaching.
Good.
One of the ways my coaching is starting to change is I'm moving from team level, and I think this is healthy, to now leaders in organizations. They're realizing that a critical success factor for Agile adoption isn't the team, it's leadership and how they're moving from traditional metrics, but also how they're doing accounting, how they're doing risk management, how they're motivating their teams, how they're envisioning product success, how they're delivering value. All of those factors change. And they can't just abstract from the team, or they can, but it's not very effective. What Agile wants to embrace them, and I mean that in a healthy. So those leaders, those frontline, that middle tier management needs to really engage with their Agile teams, and metrics is part of that.
Right, and this will be a part of your session with Sean.
Correct. And we'll talk about it in the full day workshop as well, because it's one transitioning to the full day workshop. It's a workshop of patterns that I've seen. I've been delivering this for a few years, and it's been very successful. One of the drivers for the full day workshop is I see so many test teams and test organizations and test leaders really struggle going to Agile. And so I pulled out about 15 patterns. It takes a format of a myth and a reality. So every pattern I talk about a myth, like what is the myth? Like metrics. One of the myths of metrics is that your traditional metrics don't change. To me, that's a myth. If you try to measure everything exactly the way you have been, in waterfall, in Agile, you actually I think you can destroy Agile effectiveness because you're not morphing your metrics. But at the same time, what do you measure? And so we'll talk about this patterns of myth versus reality. There's 15 of them that I've seen that are useful for folks to understand what it takes to move from traditional to Agile. Sometimes I change the title to call it, achieving the the mindset of the Agile tester is another title I've used. And I think the workshop really helps team members, team leads, test leads, but also managers and directors and folks like that.
Well, the key is perspective too. Word, that's what comes to my mind, perspective.
Absolutely. And then at the end of the workshop, I'm working on a book called The 3 Pillars of Agile Quality and Testing with a colleague of mine, Mary Thorne, and she and I have co-delivered the full day workshop on occasion. And what the 3 pillars are is a framework for mature Agile adoption and testing. Because what I find is folks are very imbalanced. And we'll talk about that in the workshop. So sometimes you see people. Cucumber is a very popular agile middle tier test automation tool. It's an open source tool, and what I find